to introduce the Mayor of Costa Mesa, Steve Mensinger. Steve?
Thank you, Tom. And thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. I want to give Tom a shout out, actually. I usually say this, and I like to repeat this quite often. As an individual that never really wanted to be in politics, and I had no designs in my life, it wasn't on my bucket list to be in politics. But several years ago, there was an epiphany in my life when somebody was running, and I saw the unions get involved in it, and I said, this shouldn't be happening. And I got appointed. And then the people in the audience would say to me at council meetings, well, you're not really a councilman, you need to be elected. And you never could get elected. And in 2012, with Tom's help and a lot of your help, I got the highest vote count in the history of the city for a first-time candidate. So I want to say thank you very much. And by the way, it's a blessing and a curse, and as my family knows. But it's a privilege, and my name is Steve Mensinger, I'm your mayor. I'm the Mayor of Costa Mesa. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to have all of you out there in the audience. And I want to recognize a friend of mine back here, Lee Ramos, who ran for council last year. Lee, if you could stand up. I often say Lee's my oldest friend. In all honesty, it's nice to have people actually that you're in political office with, but that have wisdom. And I often say that, I say this quite a bit too, and that is we really need leadership that has wisdom. And wisdom doesn't come from an education or a PhD. Wisdom comes from time and understanding how things happen and how you come back from your successes and your defeats. Lee's one of those people, and he has a lot of wisdom in his bones, and I'm hoping that in the future we'll see him in office. But I want to talk about a couple things tonight and give you an update on the city. It's not an election year, so I'm not going to tell you how great everything is, but I am going to tell you about the successes in the city of Costa Mesa. 4 years ago, when I came in, we had a $9 million deficit, and 4 years later, we've had $25 million in surpluses. And that's largely because this council embarked on a planned austerity program, which involves a reduction in the number of heads we have in our city and a reformation of the services we have. Tom brought up the helicopter earlier. The truth of the matter is a helicopter, if you look at the real numbers, was a $5.5 million program between City of Newport Beach and Costa Mesa, which we shared. So it was a shared service program, which is a good idea, but like every government program, it knows no end, and it doesn't know how to control itself. There's always something more you can do, and so we ended up with 3 helicopters, a $1 million operation, 10 police officers who were trained to fly, and a operational budget of about $3.5 million a year to operate that. And by the way, before I say anything, I always say this as a preparatory. We love our police. They're friends. In fact, I had lunch with them, one of our officers today, and they're great guys. And by the way, a lot of them, 99% of all police officers are perfect guys, and we're lucky to have them, and they do a great job for our country. And at a time when we're really challenged with a lot of societal issues. They are the thin blue line that separates us from anarchy in a lot of ways. So I fully understand that. But they themselves understand that reform is necessary and that a lot of things aren't needed. And the things that Tom talks about in the Tea Party illustrates for us quite often is that we need to be very frugal with what we have, and we need to be very methodical about how we use that. It hasn't been the case in the past, and Tom's right. Politicians get up here and they tell you all kinds of platitudinal ideas, and then they go out and they authorize things to happen which cost us more money than what we should be spending. Government really has a really succinct and small function in our lives. My son walked in the other day and I was doing emails, which I do when I get home from work, my regular job, and I have to deal with the public side of my job, my service. Now I usually respond to all my emails in 24 hours. And I think most of you know that. But my son said, Dad, he goes, guess what? And I said, what? He said, I signed up for student government. And I looked up and I said, what are you thinking? He's a freshman in high school. I go, okay, that's good. I go, this is Hunter Lee, my youngest one. And I said, Hunter, why'd you sign up for student government? He goes, I want to make change. And I go, that's the best thing I've heard out of anybody in a long time. Now the question is, what is that change you're looking for? He is a Republican, by the way. He doesn't know it yet, but I've pre-registered him. And I hope I'm speaking to only Republicans, Tom. And this is Tea Party Republicans, right? Not Tea Party Democrats? Independents, okay. So anyway, my oldest is a Republican. He's 20 years old. My wife's a Republican, so we have 4 in our household. But I said to him, remember this one thing. Government is good, but small government is better. And that's really what this is all about. We have to have police, we have to have fire, and we have to maintain a certain amount of infrastructure in a society, in our country. And I think we as a culture, all of us, tend to want everything today, and we want to do more and more and more. And the reality is we can't afford that any longer. It really is. We're at a point in this point in time in history when it's really not possible to do all the things that we once thought we could do. And local government is really your petri dish of how government should be run because it's closest to the people. You know, it's very, 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 very often we don't even meet our elected leaders, especially if they're state and national leaders. Your local leaders, like myself and Jim Righeimer and Gary Monahan, we're very accessible. And that's for a reason, because we want to hear from you directly. I talked to Joan earlier, and she brought up a few issues that she has consternation over. And I can give her answers to those issues, and then she can slap me if she wants. It's hard to do that to President Obama. So anyway, let me give you a little update on the city of Costa Mesa and what's happening. Aside from our surpluses, we are in what I call a bubble recovery in our state. There are structural problems, we all know that. But for mere fact of this city, and to give you an update, sales tax revenue is up all over the place. And it's not largely because of our local economy, it's the international economy. South Coast Plaza hit $1.8 billion in sales this year. So we get 1% of that. That's $18 million. And that's a record. There's no other place on earth, actually, that has that kind of sales in one location. The auto dealers are selling more cars. Hotels are at occupancy levels they haven't seen since 2006. Building permits are up. And generally, the economic activity is fairly healthy. So the revenues are good. The challenge that we have in our city, today and going forward is going to be the increases that relate to that dirty word called pensions. Our pension cost this year will be $21 million, and Jeff Arthur right there is probably the smartest guy in Orange County when it comes to what the issues are related to it. But what Jeff knows that we're at about $20 million as a payment of the total that's going to go to retirees. What does that mean? Well, we have a $100 million budget. We have $20 million going out to people that are retired. That's $20 million that can't go to other things that should go to, or can't go to reserves. That number is going to go up by about $8 million, $9 million, $10 million in the next 5 years. And so that means we're going to be at $30 million. So if our revenues don't continue to increase, we're going to continue to have that small percentage that goes to the other category, non-bodies, that's going to be a challenge for us to maintain. Our reserves sit at about 41 million, 42 million. Our goal is to get to 55 million total in reserves. And that is something that our finance committee and our budget committee is working on. And that's something I think that's attainable the next year or two, provided we continue to go down the path we're going to. So we're out of the woods. I'm sorry. We're entering the exit to the woods, but we're not quite out of the woods, but we look a lot better than we did 4 years ago. Police department I brought up earlier. You all would be proud to see the guys we've hired. We've hired in the last 2 years, we've hired 27 new police officers. Those 27 guys are between the ages of 24 and 30 years old. And they are exemplary individuals, great guys, smart. A lot of them are college educated, a lot of Marines. If there's any Marines here, we've hired a few of those. And they're extraordinary, and they're working out well. They love their jobs. They're not here to get involved in politics. They're here to do their duty, and they're sworn to protect and uphold the Constitution, which is something I like to see. I think public safety should be out of the politics business. Period. we will, by the end of this year, we will have paved 42% of every road in this city. So, and how do we measure that? Well, it's called the PCI index, Pavement Condition Index. And at the top is 100% and the bottom 0%. The best city right now in Orange County is Newport Beach, and they're at 84 PCI. By the end of this year, we should be close to 85 PCI. So if we continue to do what we're doing, we're going to have the best roads in all of Orange County. And I'm happy to say that because that's one of the priorities I set forth 4 years ago. If nothing else, we don't want to see potholes, right? And we want to see our roads taken care of. In fact, our sister city, Anaheim, just passed a bond to fill potholes. And that's what government does when they run out of cash. They just create another bond to pay for the things that they should have budgeted a long time ago. We have the Cadillac dealership, which is, and this is kind of a granular issue as I talk about it, but Cadillac, which is on Harbor Boulevard, is going through a major renovation. And there's a lot of neat things happening there, but that's number 4 in our city in terms of revenue generation. They're planning on expanding their facility and building their brand. If you don't know it, Newport Beach and Costa Mesa on the map of the United States has the highest household incomes of anywhere in the country. So every single, and it's amazing when you look at it, you'll see people come in here and they want to be here because the purchasing power is enormous. And that bodes well for our local economy. Developments, SOCO. How many people have been to SOCO? Raise your hand. The South Coast Collection, which is down the street. So SOCO, 4 years ago, 5 years ago actually, was purchased by a group of business people. And it was a furniture design center, which had gone defunct. It was built for about $85 million, sold to somebody for about $120 million, went back to the bank, and these guys bought it for about $35 million in a fire sale. And they came up with a plan to redesign and rebrand it, and it's called an adaptive reuse. And what that is take a concept that appeals to people, which is taking merchandise and putting it in small stores and branding it along with food and service and farmers market. And they've created a destination, which is now a place that people come here. I'm a member of the board of directors for the Visitors Bureau, the Hotel and Visitors Bureau. And they now have tours of SOCO when people come to Costa Mesa to visit. And if you haven't been there, you need to go there. It's very expensive, by the way. Some of the stuff's there is very expensive, but it's a really cool place to go. It generates about $2.5 million in revenue to the city in sales tax. So that gives you an idea of the strength of that, going from 0 to $2.5 million. They do a lot of business. The Costa Mesa as a destination, if you haven't realized from the new visitors here, it's become a place that every retailer in the country wants to be at. 17th Street is the hottest street to have a retail location right now, other than 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. Wow. So if you want to open up a store there, it's $5 a foot rent. So good, bad, or indifferent, that means somebody wants to be here. It's a desirable place to be. So a lot of that's happening. Tom touched on it. We've 3 years ago, we negotiated a contract with our fire services, and we changed our model from a model that delivers people in apparatuses made for fires to people that actually show up for EMS calls. 85% of all our calls are emergency medical services. So we bought 4 paramedic vehicles, and we kept our fire engines, and now when there's a 911 call, both vehicles will show up at your house, and if it's not a fire, the fire vehicle will go back with 2 guys and be there as additional capacity for any other emergency calls. So essentially what we did was we increased the capacity of our fire department to respond to calls, and we have a smaller little fire unit, which is going to have paramedics on it, which can treat EMS issues, which are either advanced or basic life service issues at any given time. So that was one of the restructurings we did, and we reduced the head count at the same time by 13 in our fire department, which gives us more capacity with less people. It means we save money, and that's a good thing. We still have the private paramedics that have to go to every call, so a lot of times you'll see care ambulance with our guys. Again, that's because if it's a basic life support issue, if you have say you cut off your finger and it's not a life-threatening issue, they'll take you to the hospital. Our firefighters will go there, and as soon as they get to the hospital and you get released, they'll come back to their station. If it's an advanced life support issue, then our firefighters will transport you, or they'll transport in their vehicle along with it. So it's a very good system, and it's going to continue to get better. Then the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll open it up to question and answer, Tom, if that's okay, because I think some people have some questions. I want to talk just real briefly on kind of our priorities going forward as a city, and we have our budget study sessions coming up, and then we'll have our adopted budget in July. One of the things that both Mayor Pro Tem Righeimer and Councilman Monahan, one of the things that we ran on and we talk about a lot is making sure that there's enough money in our budget always for infrastructure. And as you know, we passed C.O.I.N 3 years ago to the chagrin of the unions in order to create more transparency in that process and to give us the tools to be able to communicate with you as to what we're spending our money on. So the way it works in government is, if at the end of the day, whatever's left, if you were running a business, whatever's left that you don't spend on your people, that's what you can use, your human resources, that's what you can use on infrastructure. We have an annual budget, or an annual need for a budget of about $15 to $25 million for infrastructure. That means new firehouses, that means roads, that means sidewalks, that means sewers in some cases, and all the apparatuses that are necessary to run your city. One of the things that government has been very poor, especially local government, has been very poor at doing is reserving that money or taking the money out of your budget to save to paint your house. We've been very bad. We have fire stations that are 26, 27 years old that haven't been repaired or maintained. In fact, our police station about 9 years ago, the city used a bond to renovate that entire police station as opposed to using general fund money. I'm in business, and one of the things I have to do in business is I have to reserve capital for what we call capital expenditures. So you have to put money aside for roofs and for painting and for sidewalks and all those types of things. We haven't done that. We put a budget together, and if it doesn't vote, it gets cut. That's just the way it works. It just goes to the side. I've been doing this now 4 years, and it is, one of my mentors at one time said leadership is lonely, and it really is, because you get out there and you realize you're out there by yourself on a lot of issues, and everybody else is assuming you have all the support. Well, you really don't. Well, one of the things that helps a lot, and I say this often to Tom, is if your little efforts are noticed by all of us, and especially by candidates and elected officials. If you go to a city council meeting and speak, say what you want to say, just show up and say, here, I like it or I don't like it, but I support the council and thanks for serving. While I'm not a Marine, I wish I was, I'm not a military officer, the time you have to spend in governance, doing what you do for very little, is a huge, huge obligation, a huge time consumer, and that keeps you away from your family and things you do. But when groups like this take time out of their day to come listen to me speak, or when Tom comes to a council meeting, or when you walk a precinct, or when you do a phone bank, that means the world to us. And we don't do it, I'm not doing this for money. This will be the last office I ever hold. This will be the last office I ever hold. But I'm training guys like Harper and Ramos to take my job. But the point is, it's really heartening, and it really means a lot to me when you do take time out of your day just to show up and to write letters or to speak and to support us in different ways. And I'm grateful for all of you being here tonight to listen to me. So if it's okay with you, Tom, I'd like to open it up to any comments, if you don't mind.
I'll take the microphone, and you just speak a little bit louder.
I'll speak a little bit louder.
Who's got a question? Dr.
How do they compensate you? There's a city planner. There's a city planner who's a significant individual and goes forward many years in advance. How do they compensate you and make sure that the city planner does things that are, I don't know, commensurate with their job position and all that other kind of stuff? How do you guys interact with the city planner,
Sure.
city manager?
Sure. Okay. So the way our city in Newport works is we're elected councils, which we're like a board of directors for a company, and we have the ability to hire and fire 2 people, the city attorney and the city manager. So if you elect a majority for whatever reason, that majority has the power to say, city manager, here's our direction, here's our priorities, and if you don't do what we say, they know they can be fired. That means a lot. And the same thing with the city attorney. City attorneys, elected city attorneys can be problematic, but hired city attorneys are like anybody else. They have to follow the wishes and the designs and the philosophy of the council. So we have actually a very good city. I haven't talked about this, but when I started, we had 643 employees. Today we have 483 employees. So one of the reasons we have saved money is we've reduced the head count, which means less people are doing more work. But the truth of the matter is I've had 1,000 employees, and today I have about 150-something employees. Technology has given us a lot of tools that we didn't have before, and you really don't need as many people to do what you did before. And we're taking advantage of that. And we're getting more done today than we did probably 20 years ago in terms of addressing issues like that. You know, one of the technologies that we use right now is, and I realize these things are a curse to all of us, right? But the reality is there's a lot of power in this. And one of the things we've created is an app called Costa Mesa Connect. How many people have used it? Raise your hand if you've used it. So Costa Mesa Connect is an app that you just press a button, and this is actually cool. There's a button right here, and you press that button and a screen comes up, and if you see something in the city you want fixed or you don't like, all you have to do is put in a new request, press it again, put in what that issue is. It geolocates the location, and then you hit the button again, and you write, and it says, for instance, graffiti. If you see graffiti, I go up in three pushes, I can take a picture of graffiti that goes onto the system, goes to the internet, goes to the city, and they'll respond to you within 15 minutes as to what the status is. And then when the graffiti is painted out, they'll respond back that it's completed. You can do that for potholes, you can do that for group homes, you can do it for graffiti, you can do it for 50 other items. And it's really harnessing technology to reduce the number of things that you have to do, like phone calls. There's nothing worse than calling the city of Costa Mesa, by the way, and having to go through a phone tree that takes you 15 minutes to get to a person to tell them something that they say, it's not my department, right? That's changed with this. And it's one of the things we've done, which not everybody has, but I think, and I'm the number one, by the way, it was piloted a year ago, and I'm the number one user. I have 333 requests that I put in. So I walk a lot, so I take pictures of everybody's stuff. If you call me tomorrow, if somebody calls me from my business card and says, hey, Mensinger, I've got a bad sidewalk, I'll take a picture of it, and that's what I've done a lot of. But so far we've had 13,000 requests, just over 13,000 with Costa Mesa Connect, and that means nobody has to make a phone call, and it's using technology to reduce the number of people you need to use. So look it up. It's an app called Costa Mesa Connect. It also has our agendas on it. You can get information as to my background. You can get anything that's on the web. Anything you want is virtually on this little PDA. And I encourage everybody to try it because it's really the future, good and bad.
Okay, who else had a question?
Dave has a question.
A couple of years
SOCO,
ago,
I'll tell you.
so you'd still be in office then, I had a copy of all the wages of the significant people that serve the city.
And you saw me at the top, right?
And I just about fell over on the amount of money that they take home.
Right.
So could you please tell me, where do we stand in relationship to the rest of the cities around us? And I don't mean Newport Beach, I mean give us North County or something.
Yeah. I had lunch with one of our officers and another friend of mine who's a police officer in Monrovia today. And he said, and we were talking about it, I said, why don't you transfer in, lateral into Costa Mesa? This is a sweet gig here. And he goes, you know, man, he goes, and he said this in his own words, he goes, it is a pretty good gig there in Costa Mesa. You guys pay well. The reality is we're not at the top. Newport Beach is usually at the pinnacle of everything. And I think that'll change over time, but you've had a very rich council for many years. But Costa Mesa is probably in the 90 percentile in terms of how we pay. Keep in mind, it's very interesting. To back up for a second, we just negotiated a contract with our miscellaneous, our general employees. There's all these bargaining groups, right? So I'm going to give you all kinds of acronyms that you don't understand unless you're in the sausage making factory. And, but each group is called a bargaining group. So our miscellaneous employees, which is about, number is about 200, they were great, actually. We sat down with them, we said, we want to create we want to take all the compensation, the steps that you have. And in government, you don't necessarily get paid more if you do a good job, you just get paid more if you go up steps. And that's just the way it works, unfortunately, because that's the way collective bargaining works. But we took all those steps and we reduced those steps by 10%. So if it was $50,000, or if it was $100,000, we took it down by $10,000. Secondly, so that's all new employees. Existing employees, we reduced benefits to, not other cities, but reduced the benefits like sick pay and vacation pay and accruals and things like that. We reduced that to reflect what the private sector offers today. And that was we're the first city that we know of that's ever done that. And net result, and C.O.I.N's proved it out, net result is we'll save $2 million a year starting this year and going forward. And that's good for all of us. And at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you, there's some positions out there that are probably paid on par with the private sector, and there's some that aren't. Typically those that aren't are in public safety because there's no private sector to compare it to. And so what happens is good-hearted people come into councils and they fall in love with anybody that does public safety, and they say, give them more, give them more, give them more. And that's a challenge we all run into. It's hard not to do, but what C.O.I.N does, that process, civics, openness, and negotiation, it takes the cost of each individual and puts it into a lump sum that you can see. The top person this year, and it just came out, it's on the website, the top person in Costa Mesa this year is $356,000 in total cost. And that isn't the CEO, that's a firefighter. So that's about $120,000 in overtime, a base salary of about $150,000, and a pension contribution of about $70,000. It's a lot of money. A very expensive service. And so the question is, how do we change that? That's a real hard one to answer. I'll leave that to Jeff. At a later time when he talks about pensions. Yes, sir.
What is the percentage on your pension per category? Police, fire, et cetera, et cetera. You have a $20 million pension contribution. Can you break down the percentages?
Yeah. Police represent about 40% of the entire cost. Fire represents about 25%, and general employees represent the balance. So, and that's not necessarily a head count. That's not related to head count. That's just general contribution.
Give us the percentages.
In terms of?
51% of payroll.
Oh, you want to know so I have 100, okay, so.
21 million, what was the percentage rate?
Jeff, what is it? Jeff, it's 60?
I'm not sure what your question is. You talking about how much they contribute?
He talks about a $20 million contribution to benefits. I'd like to know what the firemen's and police contributions are, percentage-wise.
Gotcha.
Of that 20 million?
Right now, our police, just so you know.
It's about a third. But there are a lot more general employees than there are firemen than there are police.
I understand that. That's what I'm getting
But
at.
I think he's also asking how much they contribute to the
Oh,
organization.
fire and police contribute 5%?
No, I just wanted to know, there's 12 firemen, and there's 25 policemen, and 300 general employees, but it's a third.
Right, roughly.
Yeah. So if you
And then you
understand
look
those
up on the
numbers,
website.
you understand what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, the police,
Yeah.
I'll put it another way. Police unfunded liability is about $700,000 per person, and fire is about $700,000 per
Exactly.
person, and general is about $300,000. I'd have to go look at my own figures.
And by the
on
way,
that, but-
Jeff heads our pension advisory committee, which is made up of people.
Oh, good. Well, then I guess I can take his word for that one, all right.
You can take that one to the bank.
Thank you.
For the most part. Mr. Harper?
Yeah, the same category question. The pension, you said is going to go up to 30 million a year, payment, just the payment.
Payment, just our payment.
Just the payment, and that will peak about when, and then does it begin to decline at some point? Does it go down to, and then the second question is, what's a reasonable percentage of our total budget that you'd expect the pension payment?
Yeah, the reasonable part is out of the question. There's nothing reasonable because there's nothing to point to.
Okay.
We're in uncharted territory, but
But can't you point to a different city, Steve, with the same demographics with 110,000 people, with the same kind of structure? Can't you look at those other cities and say, how does that compare?
well, part of the
At
issue is
least-
we're unfunded, so we're actually paying interest on what we haven't funded. So we're, every year that cost and it's probably a bad analogy, but I'll use the credit card thing. If your credit card balance is high, you pay more than if your credit card balance is low. We're just trying to keep up with what we have, and most cities are like that. Joe Nation from Stanford came down a couple years ago and did a presentation, which is available on our website. He essentially said, you know, that if you really took the discount rate at 7.5%, and I'm probably going to go above everybody's head here, but if you took the discount rate of 7.5%, which CalPERS uses currently, and you took that down to a reasonable rate of return of 4%, our pension unfunded liability goes to about $700 million.
Steve or Jeff, does it go down at some point?
No.
No, it goes up. It goes up. Actually, looking at a January 14th presentation, but I have the curve that we're going to present to the council. So it goes up for about 20 years.
20 years.
For general employees, and for police and fire, it goes up for 30 years. They must keep going.
Wow.
We're not getting rid of
What do you think that the peak is? You know?
If we have another downturn, if we have a stock market crash,
Well, this is already locked in. It's like,
yeah, but
it goes up to like 40 million.
40 million. So it'll be 40% of our budget.
that's just the payment.
I get it.
So of $100 million, just so you all understand, $45 million of a $100 million budget, $45 million just goes to current police officers. $45 million goes to current police officers. $20 million goes to our fire, and the balance is general employees. It's about $80 million total, and we're left with whatever's left is what we can put into painting buildings, cleaning windows, and paving roads. So it's ominous. No, there's no question. The good news is, and I don't want to go into a death spiral of negativity. The great news is we all get it and we all understand numbers. We've got a pension advisory committee, which is, you know, part of the 12-step program. You got to recognize you have a problem. Now they're defining how do we can get out of it. Okay, we all understand we've got an issue, but there's a couple of ways I think Sacramento is going to solve this, because it's really they control the controls of this whole process. It's going to be a tax increase, right? Either statewide, or they're going to go back and reform the system themselves, kind of like Detroit did. But they waited till there was a bankruptcy to get there. So government does not change government usually operates in a crisis mode. That's how they operate. Politicians talk platitudes until crises occur. So it's not good. Go ahead.
Wait. We're going to have to close the questions off here. But the good news is, well, there's a lot of good news. But I've invited Steve back every month, second Thursday of every month, to at least say hello to us. And it looks like you guys have a lot of questions, so we can put him back on to answer a couple questions. Nobody asked about the parks, which I think we should talk about a little bit. There's been a lot of changes since we had the meeting on the park a couple months ago. And you know, there's a library that they want to build. I don't know with Google who in the world needs a library. I mean, by the time you drive down to the library, I can find out everything on Google.
Hang on a second. Tom lost the microphone, okay? He's actually, everything is great, Tom. We're in good shape. Now tell us a little bit about what you're going to do this. Let me have my notes back. Thank you very much.
Anyway, so the good news is Steve's coming back. The better news is that he and two other people are going to be running for 3 open spots come next year in November. And we've got to put a 3-team committee, not a committee, 3-team candidate platform together that is dynamic and that's going to win, because we need to continue to keep a conservative majority in Costa Mesa. If the union will be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to take out the coin and the people behind the coin, and believe me, they're going to try hard. So we've got our work cut out, and that's why I want Steve coming back here and keeping his face in front of us. Thank you very much, Steve. Let's give him a hand.
Actually, Caltrans is moving forward with a tollway. So we're working right now with, and essentially what they're doing is they're taking our Measure M funds from OCTA and using it with their funds to come up with a toll process, and what OCTA really, and they have the right to do that, they're the state, or they think they do. Ultimately, what OCTA is trying to do is retain control of what those, where those funds go, and also, they're also trying to make sure that Caltrans doesn't run the tollway that OCTA does, that we can have some free toll and some paid toll. Yes, sir.
So that was my question. Is it a toll lane for all 4 or 5?
That's still in negotiation. So ultimately, OCTA is trying to maintain if it's 2 or more, it's free, and if it's 1 person, or there's different configurations that they're working on. But we're Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, Westminster, the corridor cities are fighting that. We've opposed the tollway at this point, but the rest of Orange County is not. So, yes, ma'am.
Is Fairview Bridge still at stake?
That's right. There's 13 bridges actually that are going to have to go down, including Fairview, which was $7 million. And this is kind of what we talked about from the beginning. Fairview Bridge was $7 million by itself that was just built, and that's going to have to come down in order to widen the freeway. But that's government. And again, we don't own the interstate. The state does. Our contention is it's a freeway for a reason. It's supposed to be free. But unfortunately, Sacramento doesn't agree with us, and it's one of many decisions they're making. So we'll keep you posted. We do have some information on our website that the state certified the EIR 4 days ago. By the way, EIRs are very thick documents that take years, if not decades, to complete. The state finished this EIR in probably record time, like 6 weeks or 7 weeks. So they're committed to making sure that we have a tollway in Orange County. So, but we will keep you informed, and go to the Costa Mesa website, and there's a link to it if you want to find out more information as we move along.
It's a joke. It's our bullet train.
That's right. You want to talk about the bullet train and the man-made drought? The next. The court, we are, as a city, and Matt Harper, our assemblyman's pushing back. John Morlock, our new senator, is pushing back. But the truth of the matter is, I talked to John tonight. He's one of only 13 senators in the state. And Sacramento is in his own words, it's a bizarre place because they're focused on issues that aren't important, while we have some issues that are really important, especially from a fiscal point of view. I think today they were talking about Medicare for illegal aliens. That was one of their issues they were debating. So it is Sacramento. $1 billion for a bullet train. It's silly. Yes, ma'am. Any question? Yes, sir.
I've been hearing a lot about, like 4 o'clock this morning, I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about water situation, and I haven't heard of articles about maybe bringing water from Canada on pipeline.
I'm not aware of that issue, but yeah, I mean, that's probably a topic for another subject matter expert, but yeah, desalinization is one of the solutions, obviously, for an arid area, and again.
Why have they not done it all these years?
It's very expensive.
Why not? It'd be more expensive than the bullet train.
It's private, by the way, desalinization. I'm not here to debate that issue because we're going to bring up a topic I think that could take a lot longer, and I think we're still on camera, right? So I'm not trying to establish a platform for the presidency at this point, but I do have an opinion on desalinization. We can talk about that, and there's a lot of forums to discuss that. But we are short of water. Costa Mesa, the good news about our city in particular, is we have our own water, 100% of our own water. We're the only city in the county that has groundwater. So we are in good shape. That doesn't mean the state or somebody else can't come in and claim it, but we're good stewards of it, and we are ahead of the curve in terms of reclaiming a lot of our own water. The Fairview ponds, which are in the lower part of Fairview Park, takes 40% of all of our storm water and puts it back into the ground from the whole city. And then we just installed a deep percolation pond in the downtown area by Community Center, right? That takes all the water from about 2 square miles of the central part of Costa Mesa and puts it back into the ground. So we're ahead of the curve on deep water charging, as they call it. So, yes. So I knew you were going to bring that up. I'm going to tell everybody, being an elected official, not a politician, I do have opinions on that, and I have kids, and I'm very involved in youth sports. And so I'm going to give you my opinion, and we can debate it offline or online. There is a shortage of field space in our city for young kids. And I was talking to somebody earlier from St. John's. I think my kids went there, and they're now, one's at Estancia and one's at OCC. We have to find more field space, or we have to light fields. That's the reality in order to meet the needs of all the new families that are moving in. And the preponderance of sports. I mean, we all complain about kids, we don't want them in front of video. We want them outside doing things. Well, recreation and sports go hand in hand. And that's the good news. Fairview Park is 200 acres. What the Fairview Park Committee has looked at is what we can do with that park to improve it, not only sports fields, but walkways, pathways, water, all kinds of issues. They looked at one part of Fairview Park where the trains are, for whether we can put fields there or not. And Joan's giving me that look. She's going to beat me up because she lives close to me. The truth of the matter is, I came out and I said, whatever the public wants, which is kind of a mediocre way to deal with it. I really should make decisions, but I said, look, if the public doesn't want it, they don't have to have it. So we're doing a field use survey, and then we're going to do a survey of the population, and if the public wants it, then we'll look at it. We still have to fund it. If we decided today to build fields there, it wouldn't be there for 10 years. But looking toward the future, if we own that land, what's the best way to use it? Some people say, by the way, some people say nothing, and other people call me all the time saying, hey, Mensinger, we need fields and we own the land. Why don't we put fields there? It's grass. We're not talking about structures. It's one of those polarizing issues, kind of like fireworks. Well, I'm bringing up another issue as we're talking about. But the truth of the matter is, we're looking at it, which I'm required to do as an elected official, and we're weighing the cost and benefits. Ultimately, if I were a betting man, it won't ever happen. But at the same time, in the future, we're going to see talk about whether we light fields, because we have to either have more fields or extend the capacity of those fields that we have.
Could you explain your concept of improving it by putting down more concrete?
After the meeting.
After the meeting, I was just told by my boss.
Yeah, Steve's going to stick around for a couple minutes, but and he's going to come back. May 14th is our next meeting, and Steve will be here, and he'll say a few words, and you can ask him a few questions. Okay.